Why talk about ethnocentrism in a module about culture shock? Because the more ethnocentric someone is, the worse their culture shock will be. In this module, we will look at several theories about interacting with other cultures. All of them have some truth, and all probably have some problem areas. I encourage you to be very eclectic and take from each what has meaning for you. Bennett's description of the development of intercultural sensitivity explains the transition from ethnocentrism to ethnorelativism. Denial is the first stage of ethnocentrism. This is when someone just kind of wanders through life without realizing that someone next to them could have very different cultural views. If they do think about other cultures at all, they think of them in very stereotypical settings. So, for example, if someone is from Africa, then they must be poor and live with wild animals. There is no realization that Africa has large, modernized cities like the rest of the world. Defense is the next stage of ethnocentrism. Now they are able to recognize that there are differences between cultures, but they do so in a way that protects their own interests. So different equals wrong or deficient. They categorize people into us or them, of course with us being superior. Minimization is the third stage of ethnocentrism. This is when we realize there are differences between cultures, but we minimize them by saying everyone is the same. We all are human. I've hinted a couple times this quarter already that there are problems with this viewpoint. One of them is the melting pot concept where every culture gets mixed together, so what makes each one unique is devalued and not respected. Another problem is that when I say everyone is the same, I mean that everyone is the same as me. It is a very unusual person who can consciously say that everyone is the same because I am like you. Usually, we unconsciously approach this in an ethnocentric way, thinking that everyone else is like us. So, us, or me, is still the superior culture. Don't get me wrong. There are times when we need to hear that everyone is the same. We need to hear that we all bleed red. But if this is your only concept of culture, then you are not respecting the value of differences between the cultures. Acceptance is the first stage of ethnorelativism. Ethnorelativism believes that no one culture is superior to another. It recognizes differences between the cultures, but believes they can be adapted to or accommodated. In the acceptance stage, we know our own cultural identity and we accept someone else's cultural identity. We are curious about the differences and what they mean. Acceptance does not always mean agreement. For example, I can accept that some cultures believe in having multiple wives, even if I do not want to live like that myself. Adaptation is the second stage of ethnorelativism. This is what we generally understand as acculturation. We can easily move from one cultural viewpoint to another. We express intercultural empathy. This stage is part of the role-play writing assignment this week. I am asking you to write 2 role-plays about the same situation. Each role-play will be written from a different cultural viewpoint. See the assignment for more instructions. According to Bennett, integration is the third stage of ethnorelativism, and he intends for it to be a more desirable stage than adaptation or acculturation. By the way, integration here is what we refer to as assimilation. I would argue that this stage is not necessarily better than adaptation and is not necessarily always what you want to reach. In this integration stage, identity becomes fluid. The boundaries between my original identity and my new integrated identity are fuzzy and unclear. This can be positive or negative. It can be positive if I am able to feel comfortable with and identify with my new identity as a new identity. It can be negative if it leaves me as feeling cultureless in a bad way, meaning that it leaves me feeling like I don't belong anywhere instead of like I belong in both cultures or multiple cultures. Where do you see yourself on this continuum?